You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam. Streaming on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and at DCAUreview.com. Now, here's today's episode.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 139 of the DCAU Review. I am one of your hosts, Cal, and with me, again, along for this journey, Liam, by the way, happy, I guess, 3-year anniversary to you. This is technically the 3-year anniversary of our program, or maybe last week was, but joining us as he has for each and every week is my good brother, good friend, and the man that runs our Twitter page. That's right, it is Liam. Liam, welcome to a new year of the DCAU Review.
That's right. Happy New Year to everyone listening, and to you, Cal. And yeah, it's a new year. Feels pretty similar to the old year, if I'm being honest, but you know,
only the calendar has changed.
That's true, but hey, we'll cross the bridge that is 2021 as we get to it. But for right now, let's talk about some superhero cartoons, specifically the cartoon that we'll be covering for the next few weeks here in January. That being, of course, Superman, the animated series. It had been a while since we returned to the sunny skies of Metropolis, and here we are today with another villain origin episode. Well, it's not really an origin, but his first appearance. And what a first appearance it is. One of the most titanic debuts in DCAU history. We are, of course, talking about Mr. Mxyzptlk's debut in the aptly titled episode Mxyzpxilated.
There you go. Great pronunciation there. Well done. This is one that's easy to trip up. So
that's right.
Yeah, this is... I am very excited to get into dissecting this episode with you. This may go down as one of the most difficult episodes I've ever had to try and review, just because of the tone, the way that things go, and just the episode in total. It's a fun one, but yeah, we'll go through our scores in just a moment here. Before we do, as we do before each and every review commences, we will have our official Imdb Synopsis for this week's episode, which you mentioned. Mxyzpxilated originally debuted back on September the 20th, 1997. Liam, you were just a wee one still. And yeah, do you feel old? Always. And so we just celebrated...
It's my secret cap.
we just celebrated the 23-year anniversary of this episode. So let's get that IMDb synopsis so we can start breaking down this episode.
Absolutely. This is the synopsis for Mxyzpxilated, which was written by Paul Dini, boy was it ever, directed by Dan Reba, with music by Harvey Cohen and animation by Coco/Dong Yang. And that synopsis reads as such. A powerful other-dimensional imp starts to annoy Superman every 90 days while becoming equally aggravated at the superhero for forcing him back just as often.
A lot of words in that one.
Yes, and not well structured, but that is a pretty, while not an apt description, it does cover our main points as we jump into plot here. We kind of just start out. Superman's flying through the city. He sees this little man walking through the street, yelling about some guy named McGurk. He's about to get hit by an armored truck, so Superman flies down to save him, and the truck turns into bubbles, and it just kind of gets weirder from there.
McGurk, where are ya?
Look at that crazy little man.
He'll be killed. Hey, McGurk, I'm losing my patience here. Confusing, ain't it?
Yes, as you mentioned, this is very much a Paul Dini. Like we've talked a lot about Paul Dini's sense of humor. He's written a lot of Joker stories, it seems, and you know his humor seems to shine through very much so in those episodes. But I think this perfectly encaptures maybe the mind and sense of humor of Paul Dini himself, because it does only get weirder from there. And Later on, we get Mr. Mxyzptlk popping back up, but this time he shows up in a comic strip that Jimmy Olsen just thinks is the absolute most hilarious thing he's ever read.
Well, to be fair, he may have been laughing at one of the other comic strips that we will talk about in visuals. But yeah, either way, his direct introduction to Clark Kent / Superman is to pop out of a comic strip, and that's where we learn the pronunciation of his name.
What's so funny, Jimmy?
Check out the new comic strip. What a riot.
Mr. Mxyzptlk?
No! Repeat after me, bright boy. It's Mix. Yes. Spit. Lick. Hey, have you seen McGurk? McGurk!
Hold it. Did you see him?
Who?
That weird little man. He was right here.
Yeah. Do me a favor, Kent. Crack up after we've covered the museum opening.
Absolutely,
Which is always very helpful.
Well, we learned also, a little Easter egg there as he gives that pronunciation. Right before that, Clark pronounces it in the same exact way that they pronounced it in the old Super Friends cartoon, which was, of course, Mr. Mxyzptlk.
Yes.
And Mixie says he's quick to correct Clark that is not how it's pronounced.
Well, it's funny because I think since in the comics they sort of have implied that there's only one Mxyzptlk, so like all of his appearances throughout different mediums, it's the same guy. So I like the idea that after like 10 to 15 years of dealing with the Super Friends pronunciation, he finally had enough, and when he found this new universe, he had to set the record straight right away.
Yeah, there's a Y and a Z in there. It's not it's not YL, it's not it's not MXYL.
Exactly.
PLK. There's a Y and a T and some other things in there.
But yes, from there it's Superman's very annoyed and kind of exasperated by the whole thing. Is able to reason with Mixie a little bit and is like, hey, if this is a game that we're pitted against each other, there's got to be rules. So like, how do I win? And Mxyzptlk make me say my name backwards. And if you do that successfully, then I will go away for 90 days. And then from there, it's just like a series of almost montages of Superman pretty easily tricking him into saying "kill Tipsy's him." Some of them even happen off screen, but it's like the course of this episode. This is an entire year's worth of time. They give us real calendar dates to go by, and some fifth dimensional calendar dates as well.
Yeah, the month of Pants went by really quickly.
Every year, Pants just goes by so quick. But
meanwhile, Relish just drags.
Even though it's the shortest month, but somehow Relish always drags. This is a very silly episode, and I think that's reflected in our review of it here.
Well, that's why. So yeah, and eventually, so after being foiled so many times, Mixie comes back and he tells Superman that he's tired of being bested this way, and he changes the rules. Superman doesn't protest, but Superman's just exasperated at this point because it is every 90 days, and he is circling his calendar dates and is just peeved off, and he's just had enough. And so he's in a way though playing possum in that way, but he convinces Mixie to change the rules to, if he says his name backwards twice in a row, then he will be gone, quote unquote, forever.
What's it gonna take to get rid of you? Forever.
You always trick me into doing that name thing once, but this time you're going to have to make me do it twice in a row, which means I can say "kill Tipsy's him" all I want, as long as I break it "kill Tipsy's him" up. Ha! If you beat me, then I'm history. God, finito! Bye-bye! But if I win, I got me a new stable boy. Deal?
Whatever you want. I quit.
Huh?
So, of course, then Superman acts like he's given up. He doesn't care. He walks away from Mxyzptlk. Mxyzptlk pursues him, changes into this kryptonite warhead missile, which I thought was interesting. And, of course, we find out that him chasing Superman through the city was all part of Clark's plan because he's pretty smart himself.
I won! I won! In your face, Superman!
No, loser. In yours.
Oh, shoot my monkey. I skywrote my own name. Backwards.
Twice.
You were just toying with me the whole time. Even from the start.
Pretty much, yeah.
Never had you fooled for a second.
Sorry.
You were the superior being all along.
Well.
And now I'm gone. Gone forever.
Yeah, that's yes. He gets Mxyzptlk to chase him in such a way that Mxyzptlk, with the exhaust trail that he had to choose, because he's not he made himself into a rocket. He could have chosen to be a rocket with no exhaust, but he chose to make himself a fully functioning rocket with exhaust coming out the back.
He could have just, the way that he transports himself, he literally could have just transported himself back and forth in front of Superman.
So many options.
But yep.
But instead, he creates real exhaust and skywrites his own name backwards twice. And therefore, Superman has outsmarted him, and everything goes back to normal. This is such a weird episode, and we're only really scratching the surface. And a lot of it is because, I think a lot of it is more a visual. There's a lot of visual jokes and gags in this episode that we'll be getting to. But as a plot, it's basically this weird dude shows up to mess with Superman. Superman constantly outsmarts him until he's ready to actually maybe try to kill Superman, at which point Superman just uber outsmarts him, and we put a little bow on the story there. And Mxyzptlk gets a weirdly happy ending, though, possibly literally, as it ends with him making out with his attractive girlfriend, but then he couldn't resist turning the Superman maquette, which was probably the exact maquette you could have gotten at the Warner Brothers studio store in 1997.
Things Liam would go back in time and get if possible.
Yeah, they're really expensive now. And he turns it into a monkey with the symbols. So we know that Mxyzptlk still holds a grudge, but that is it's this weird little story. It's completely wrapped up. There's a nice bow on it. Obviously, this character just come back one additional time and several times in various comics tie-in stuff. But as just looking at this in a bubble from a story perspective, especially, it's so weird.
It is. It absolutely is. It's fun, but I don't feel like I feel like we just got done watching a Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd cartoon or a Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote cartoon. It's a Looney Tune.
Yes, it very much is. It very much follows the structure, including him building, spending a solid there's a 2 to 3 minute montage of him building this giant robot suit. He stomps out of the room, poof, teleports away, and his girlfriend counts down from 5, and before she even gets to 1, he's been tricked into saying his name backwards and is back.
Now you're gonna get it. Oh, yeah! You'll be crying early today, boy. Bye, Gishby. Don't wait up.
5, 4, 3.
Nuts. Not one word.
It's really silly and fun, but it's it's just very unique. That's the only word I could think to describe it. But because of all of that, I had a weird time coming up with a score for plot because it is so wacky and so different than anything, and even other lighter, more comedic episodes like, your Kid Stuffs or your This Little Piggies. Like, those still followed, like, there were rules to it.
Right.
And we still, like, followed our superheroes trying to deal with these crises. This one is just... I guess that's kind of the nature of the Mxyzptlk character, but, like, there's no rules to any of this. So, yes, it's part Looney Tunes, part, like, weird montage, part just, just random jokes and stuff, and... So I ended up as a 7 out of 10 because I enjoyed it a lot. I did, but I can't say it's like it's not like Paul Dini's masterpiece. Like, I wouldn't put this next to Heart of Ice.
Right.
But but for the story that it was, it's exactly what it should have been.
Isn't it crazy to think that this story came out of the same person that wrote Heart of Ice? My
right.
goodness.
You think of some of those or Over the Edge or some of these really dramatic, serious episodes, and the same guy was creative and funny and wacky enough to script something so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's interesting too that they put such a focus. It's very much written in the style of your classic Merry Melody, your classic Bugs Bunny cartoon, in which your main character, the character that you're rooting for, essentially, is not featured in a large portion of it. A lot of it is Mxy and Gizby hanging out while Mxy's trying to figure out and strategize as to how he's going to defeat Superman, as you mentioned. There's a long montage. And you're rooting for Superman because this guy is just a pest that's just disrupting Superman's life. But there's not a lot. It doesn't at any point feel like there's a lot at stake. It doesn't at any point feel like that Superman is way out of his league. Even at the end, as Mxy supposedly outsmarted him and is this kryptonite warhead missile, I can't imagine. It doesn't feel like the stakes are very high or that anything is going to happen because of this. It's just, you're just waiting and expecting for Superman to come out on top, just like you would Bugs Bunny to outlast, Yosemite Sam. Like, it's going to happen. Like, it's just how and when and getting there, which is where the fun is. So,
well, especially when they establish from the first scene where he turns Ma and Pa Kent into chickens and then ducks and then weird slug monsters, that as soon as he disappears, everything goes back to normal and no one remembers what happened except for Superman.
Right.
So it's like, it's not like nobody has to deal with, like, the horror of having been transformed into a horse, or...
The only thing the only stakes that happened was that Superman apparently destroyed Rodan's thinker.
That's true.
In the DCAU continuity, Rodan's thinker existed and is now destroyed because Mxy tricked him into punching the statue and destroying it.
Rough stuff.
Yeah. I don't think I mentioned, but I had a lot of fun with this episode. Mm-hmm. I think it is... writing-wise, if you think about the tone of most of these episodes, and you're like, it's okay to have these comedic have a comedic episode. This would not have worked as a Batman episode. I'm just gonna throw that out there. It would feel very out of place.
It's very good that they never did. I'll tell you what, and we will review it someday, maybe sometime this year even. There's a great Batmite episode of the Brave and the Bold cartoon, but the Batman the Animated Series world could not have pulled off a Batmite episode, anything resembling this. At least not in the original series, certainly, and probably not even in New Batman Adventures.
Yeah, so, there's something about this that works for Superman, the animated series. Obviously, there's more sci-fi elements. You're dealing with an alien as your main character, so that in and of itself lends to some of this insanity. So I had a lot of fun. I had to give this an 8 out of 10 for plot, just because it is written really well. Like,
yes,
it's written really well for what it's supposed to be. It's a comedy piece. It borrows from those classic tropes that have been around for a very long time and that work and are a good formula, and it sort of infuses it with a lot of just off-the-wall, zany, Paul Dini humor that fits so well for this Mr. Mxyzptlk character. So for those reasons, that's why I ended up giving it an 8 out of 10.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, Liam. Let's move on to what will probably be what we spend most of our time talking about today, if I had to guess, and that is going to be animation and visuals. We've already pointed out a couple of things here, but we can probably go through, starting with that comic strip that we mentioned. So we mentioned that Jimmy is reading the comics and points out these throws the comic page over to Clark, and Clark pans down, and there's several different comic strips on this one page here, all of which are inside Easter egg meta jokes that also sort of reference other real world existing comic strips.
Yeah, so we start off with Deanie the Meanie. A little bit on the nose there, but yes, it's a combination Calvin and Hobbes / Dennis the Menace style comic starring what appears to be a young Paul Dini. Mm-hmm. We have Glean, which stars Shane Glines and Glenn Murakami, which is a Peanuts parody,
right?
Which involves the Glenn Murakami character shouting, "Do I gotta hold your hand?" Which is so specific of a punchline that I feel like that has to be like a real life quote.
Correct.
From when they were working together. So we have, was it Dan Danger, which is a Dick Tracy spoof starring a bald man that happens to look a bit like Dan Reba.
Yep.
And then below the Mixie cartoon, we have this random one called Zub Street, which doesn't really look like any specific creator, nor does it look like any specific comic strip style. Like maybe like a Ziggy or something, but nothing like super specific like the other ones. And apparently this was just a critique of Bruce Timm, like, venting about his thoughts on, like, popular comic art at the time. Of course, you're thinking about the mid-90s and what that... So it's like someone just dressing down someone's art portfolio and talking about how amateurish it all is. And then it ends with, like, some gag about, like, if this strip goes any further, I'm gonna kill myself or something. Like, it's a real weird... like super meta joke, I guess, about what Bruce Timm's thoughts were about, I guess, certain popular artists at the time.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you have to pause it to really appreciate it. You can kind of scanning down, it'll kind of just appear as maybe background filler. But yeah, being able to actually, the fact that they went in and wrote in different, they actually made these comic strips with punchlines that were meta that they could kind of squeeze in here. I thought that was, I mean, that's pretty funny.
Yes, that's quite good. Even when Mixie's just telling you how to pronounce his name, there's some transformations. He's Mix, he turns into a blender. We have Yes, which is representing, I believe, the British band Yes. Mm-hmm. He turns into like an album cover that's very similar to that. And then the dog he turns into when he says the word lick appears to be Charlie Dog from Looney Tunes.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of because of Mixie's weird powers, which are anything. He's magic. There's a lot of wacky stuff that they're able to pull out here. Him bringing Rodin's the Thinker to life as his buddy McGurk, and it fighting Superman. The giant robot that we mentioned. It's scene after scene of him welding and hammering and playing with a wrench, and he builds this giant suit which has like Swiss Army knives coming off the shoulders and has like a laser that blows up his own head at one point and turns it to ash, and then a new head just pops up. It's straight out of Looney Tunes.
Yeah, that whole sequence of him working on the robot is really good. That's when you see the different fifth dimensional months pass by as he's working on this thing. There's a scene where he's working on the robot, and his girlfriend Gisby enters the room, and it's a parade of like Bruce Timm pinup drawings.
Yes.
Just clearly it looked like just Bruce just did a whole bunch of model sheets and was just like, all right, put these in there. So she just keeps changing outfits and various different looks to try and entice him, and he's just 100% focused on tightening these nuts and bolts on this robot suit until she has to drop a plate out of thin air onto his face. But that doesn't sway him. He continues to keep working. And that's the funny thing. The running theme is that Mxyzptlk is obviously incredibly hot, and all Mxy is concerned about is trying to best Superman. She even suggests that he just spend more time with her during the months that he has to wait before he can go back and torture Superman, and he brushes her off in typical terrible boyfriend fashion.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that that 90s sitcom trope of the very attractive woman just doting on this jerk husband or boyfriend of hers, and like him being kind of mean or dismissive of her, and her just kind of rolling her eyes and going back to whatever she was doing, kind of a Married with Children type vibe to this relationship. And there's some good stuff at the end. We mentioned Mxy turns into a plane and then into a kryptonite warhead, which I don't know if this is still a kid's cartoon, but JJ the Jet Plane came to mind.
Yeah.
When Mxy is the plane, certainly. It's just a plane with a big Mxy face on it.
For sure.
And then I guess one thing we haven't really touched on, but the Mxy design itself, and the Mxy and Mxyzptlk designs. Mxy looks very similar to how he appeared in the 40s and 50s.
I prefer this look to the skinny, yellow suit wearing.
Yeah, it's like a weird, 50s sci-fi spacesuit or something.
Yeah.
That I've never been a huge fan of that look with the weird white hair. So I was a much bigger fan of seeing this more classic look, and it adds to, he looks a lot like Elmer Fudd. I'm guessing that wasn't an accident.
Right.
He's a big giant bald head. So it adds to the Looney Tunes nature of it. The scene at the end where Superman has tricked him yet again, and he's sort of slowly disappearing, and it's one of his legs disintegrates into powder, the other leg pops like a balloon, and then a couple other parts disappear, and then his head again opens like a balloon, and all the air comes out of it, and the hat drops down. There's some really, really creative stuff, and that's kind of the wildest part. As funny and comedic as this episode is, and as little traditional action as there is, you can tell that the storyboard artists, the directors, and the animation team just had a field day with this, because all of these jokes, again, a lot of these are just visual gags, are so good, and they're just on the screen for a second, and then they move on. Oh,
and you got to remember, of course, this is a lot of these people came from, before starting work on this DCAU project, were working on Tiny Toons. Mm-hmm. So it's not as if they hadn't had the opportunity to storyboard and write and come up with things that were very Looney Tunes adjacent. Animaniacs and everything else that was happening sort of at that time. So for them to be able to sort of take those, work them into a Superman story without it being... making it work within the confines of a DCAU and making it make sense with this fifth dimensional imp, makes a lot of sense and is pretty funny to consider. There's more we could go into. There's stuff later on that happens. There's the scene right before he transforms into this warhead. He begins turning all of Clark's colleagues into various different animals. Jimmy Olsen is turned into a turtle, which, of course, if you know anything about the Silver Age or even more modern comics, Jimmy Olsen's Turtle Boy is a nod to that. Then, of course, also this was one that I didn't know about, but Lois being turned into a horse has a sort of a subtle meaning also.
Yeah, so in that era of comics when there was 55 Superman titles, there was, in addition to the Superman and Action Comics, there was Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, there was Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane. All these different characters had their own books, and in one issue of Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane, she is turned into a horse and has a whirlwind romance with Comet the Super Horse before being turned back into a human by the end.
I kind of want to do a deep dive one bonus episode into some of the goofiness of like the Silver and Golden Age.
Oh man, it's amazing.
Like how did all of these animals get from Krypton to Earth? Like
yes,
like we didn't mention it.
Dog.
We didn't. Right, a dog, sure, maybe, but like there's a cat, there's a horse, there's a rabbit, a monkey. Like what else is there? Speaking of Super Cat, Streaky the Super Cat makes her series debut here. Actually, obviously she's not the Super Cat; she's a regular cat, but she does end up flying in a sequence.
That's right.
Which of course was a nice little wink and nod. Yeah, so there's a lot of visual fun, of course, to be had in a Goofy episode that we keep comparing to a Looney Tunes episode. It's a lot of fun. My only complaint about this was, we watched this while we still can on the DC Universe app, and this has not yet been released in HD. They haven't remastered, at least it hasn't been released as a remastered edition yet. So watching this on a giant modern television, it really exposes some of the faults to this old animation here. There's like this weird, almost like double vision type, like consistency to it. The lines sort of are like, I don't know how to explain it.
It looks like all the characters are vibrating or something. Like it's a weird. It's just a little off, and it's one of those things where once you notice it, it's hard to not notice it all the time. So.
Not to mention, of course, it's not like full screen,
right.
So it's not, it's not in that full, current aspect ratio for your television. So here's hoping that 2021 is the year that we might get the remastered versions of Superman the Animated Series in some form or fashion.
Well, this would, in fact, 2021 would, in fact, be the 25th anniversary of Superman the Animated Series kicking off, so hopefully, knock on wood, we are approaching that date very soon.
Yeah, you would think we would have planned if we were kicking off 2021 with Superman the Animated Series. You think we would have mentioned that in our intro that this is the 25th anniversary. Go figure. All right, well, I think it's time we get to our scores here. I didn't have a choice. It's goofy. Certainly, it's not based in any sort of reality, but that's all of the fun, and I had to give this a perfect 10 out of 10.
And I am right along with you there. I also gave it a 10 out of 10. Honestly, though, it's just everything, and again, you excuse it all because Mxy's magic, but just the scene where, Ma and Pa Kent get down and start, before they turn into chickens, they're already acting like chickens, so they, squat down real low and, pull their arms in and start pecking at the ground. And, it's so weird. And then they're turned into chickens and ducks, and then, the slug monsters, which Clark takes the kitchen table and shoves them up against the wall, and then Mxy turns them into a version of the American Gothic painting.
Yep.
Just so many, really quick, visual gags, in a show you might see, The Simpsons or something, where it's just... It's all comedy, but it's there's a lot of very specific quick gags that if you aren't paying attention or even if you are paying attention, you might miss ones on your first watch. So yeah, there's so much good stuff.
You're rewarded almost for paying attention and picking up on them, and you get to laugh with them at making these very quick jokes. One of them being even when and I didn't even quite get the reference, but I knew there had to have been some sort of reference there. But as he's transforming the Kents into chickens, he then switches them and he says, "I prefer ducks." And I wasn't sure if that was a reference to Affleck. I wasn't sure. So judging by the timelines, this is before Gilbert Gottfried actually got the job as the voice of the Affleck duck. But apparently at the same time, or actually a few years beforehand, Gilbert was a part of a animated series that was going on the USA Network called Duckman, which was from one of the writers of The Simpsons. So by him saying that was even a meta, fourth wall breaking wink wink joke. So even in quick dialogue, there were sometimes there were some jokes.
Yeah, and the very last joke of the episode of him turning the Superman statue into, hey, it's speaking of super pets, it's Beppo the super monkey. Literally a monkey in a Superman suit with a little spit curl in front and playing the cymbals. yeah, it's just wall-to-wall visual and sight gags. It's really, really well done. And Dan Reba was the director on this one, so fantastic job all around.
Lots of fun for this one. All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category, which is going to be music. And this is another category where the music plays a background, for some of it, but there are some spots where it plays into this sort of Merry Melodies type theme.
I was going to say, definitely my highlight on music is definitely the Mxy making the robot montage. It's like... It's got this very like assembly line like soundtrack to it, and like certain strings are played when he's doing a certain thing, like when he's hitting with the hammer, and then he shifts over, and then like it'll stop for a second for the joke to go, and then it'll pick back up with this really fast-paced assembly line type music, and then when Gisby is transforming into all her different looks depending on like what the style is, the music kind of shifts a little bit. And yeah, they do some really clever stuff with Mxy, especially during that montage.
Yeah, they even switch. She has a very Chiquita Banana-esque look that she puts on, and they did a little bit of music for that. A little bit of a Chiquita Banana-esque sound-alikes. Sound there. I think that the music didn't need to be in the forefront here. There's not, I don't think, a particularly strong Mxy theme that I can think of. There is some sort of that, what I would say is, background accompanying music, things that make it sound like a Looney Tune, some light strings and piano that come in at various different points to punctuate whatever's happening or the joke that's happening on screen.
Or like he's blinking and the xylophone plays when he blinks, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Or he's, like you said, the whole montage, when he blows his own head up as he's trying to make this robot. There's a piano roll when the ash from his head falls to the ground. When he's and at the end as he's disappearing, like for the final time, there's accompanying sort of like tragic music that plays in the background. So. There's not like a strong theme that I thought warranted a super strong score. I think that it's designed as atmospheric and certainly meant to be, not the focus of the majority of it, because there's so many visual gags, as we said, or even punchlines given through dialogue. For those reasons, I ended up giving music a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, and I went just a tick higher with an 8 out of 10 there. For everything that we've talked about, like we said, it's not that overbearing theme, because again, so much of is either in the vocal performances, as we're talking about, the writing, or in the visual gags. So it didn't really necessarily have as big a part to play this week, but it did what was necessary and did what was asked of it pretty well. And as you mentioned, when he's disappearing at the end, it's like each body part individually goes away. There's like one sharp note every time. Like the leg falls and then pops, and then the arms disappear, and then going all the way up and accompanied by some sound effects. And yeah, they do some really, really clever stuff with the music in those final little bits there, and certainly in the montage there.
For sure. All right, Liam, let us wrap things up here with our final category of the day, which, of course, is going to be voice acting. Of course, since we have restarted covering this series for this month, we can reintroduce ourselves to some of the series regulars here. But, of course, we do have a couple of new stars as well joining us. So let's review our voice actors for this week.
Well, first off, I'll just mention doing the voice of the slug creatures is Scooby-Doo himself, Frank Welker. Wouldn't mention it any other time if it wasn't something of a voice acting or cartoon legend.
He get anytime you need like an animal sign or an animal sound, they call in that guy.
Absolutely. But we have Shelley Fabares as Ma Kent. We have Mike Farrell as Pa Kent. We have
they're played for comedy.
Yeah, man, they have a rough go of it there, but I did get a kick out of, in her sort of typical doting semi-monotone Ma voice, Shelley Fabares just casually going, well, it's obvious that you're being toyed with by a fifth-dimensional imp who has powers far beyond our understanding.
And Clark kind of almost, he stopped short of doing a double take at it, but it's just really, really funny. And then Pa just slips into talking about getting a good peck towards corn. So.
Yes. As right before they drop down to start their chicken transformation. But
Impossible things keep happening, and I'm the only one who ever sees them. Am I going nuts?
Oh, Clark, I'm sure it's not as bad as that.
I can't go on being Superman if I keep flipping out.
Now, take it easy, son. There's a perfectly logical explanation for all this.
Yes, it's obvious a brilliant godlike life form from a dimension twice removed from ours is testing your powers.
What makes you say that?
Oh, that's not important, Clark. What really matters is following through with a nice firm peck when scratching up corn.
Ma? Pa? No.
that's some funny stuff. We have brief appearances from some of our regulars, like David Kaufman as Jimmy Olsen, and Dana Delaney as Lois, who doesn't have much to do in this episode, but the bit at the end where it's kind of like the last act is bookended by first Clark being bummed out because he knows Mixie's about to show back up, and Lois is telling him this story about how every time her sister comes to town, she takes over the place. And then she gets turned into a horse, of course. Then they like redo that scene because, of course, everything goes back to normal once Mixie is away, and now he's happy. And she goes to tell the story again, but because she was a horse and Mixie was feeding her a carrot during the scene, she's just casually like Bugs Bunny holding and chomping on this thing. And
I was gonna say it's definitely like. It puts the bow on the entire episode of her chomping on a carrot, like Bugs Bunny at the end of it.
Yes, but I thought that. Why am I eating this? It's a pretty great delivery from Miss Delaney on that one.
Agreed.
And then, of course, we have our main event players here this week. We have Sandra Bernhard as Gisby, who she very much comes across, and we talked about that a little bit in her character design, I think, but. She's very much like a Jessica Rabbit type, like just like you said, a Bruce Timm pinup model,
right?
So she has that very sort of like sultry, sensuous voice, and is constantly trying to get him to pay attention to her, like we talked about already.
Nuts!
He beat you again, huh?
Don't start with me, Mxyzptlk! I've only got 90 days until my next bout with that Tate Claude. How does he do it?
Mxy, I wore this new outfit just for you.
No time for love, babe. Gotta beat Superman.
Oh, Mxy, I don't like the way you're obsessing over the Superman person. Using our powers to torment humans is so three-dimensional.
Got to beat Superman!
If he upsets you that much, why don't you just, I don't know, destroy him?
Hey, that's it! Next time I'll finish him off before he can trick me. Thanks, Gisby. Love ya.
Yeah, lucky me.
I think she does a solid job as that, but let's be honest, there's only really two voices that really are going to get our focus this week, and those are Tim Daly as Superman, of course, and the debuting Gilbert Gottfried as Mxyzptlk, and my goodness, the dichotomy between these two. Like, I feel like we've talked about how, because we jump around with Superman, sometimes Tim Daly's great, sometimes he's not so great, sometimes he's just okay. He, being the straight man for the ridiculousness that is Gilbert Gottfried as Mxyzptlk. Like, this is one of Tim Daly's finest hours, honestly.
Hands down. He is... You need somebody that is... With how over-the-top Gilbert Gottfried is, you have to be... Like, you can't have two very loud, obnoxious people. Like, I don't think you could have... I don't think I could have tolerated, like, a Mark Hamill Joker, Gilbert Gottfried, Mxyzptlk episode. Yeah. Like, that would have been too much, too over-the-top characters. It just would have been... I mean, you can... Personally, I can only deal with so much Gilbert Gottfried as it is, just because of how loud and how, like, constant his delivery is for every line. Mm-hmm. So having two loud people in an episode you couldn't have done it. And if Superman, like, the whole thing is that Clark isn't, like, he's annoyed by this, but he's not bothered by it. He's not losing his cool. He's not losing his mind. He refuses to... and he's smarter than this fifth dimensional imp, and he knows it. It's just slightly annoyed by everything. So,
right, like, he is treating Mxy the way, like, you or I might treat, like, having to take the trash out or something. Right. It's like, it's just something I have to do. Right. I'm not enjoying it, but it's like, it's just what I gotta do.
Right. Is it the world's worst thing? Is it a super inconvenient? Yeah, I don't want to do it, but, like, all right, I gotta do this. So for Tim Daly to just sort of give his understated, like, performance of just playing off of this loud, obnoxious, annoying, screaming character for 22 minutes, it's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, and his delivery on some of the more comedic lines is great too. When Mxy first makes up the rules, and he's just like, "Well, how the heck am I supposed to say your name backwards? I can't even say it forwards." And Mxy's like, no, I say it backwards. You don't say it backwards. Say what? Like, it's such a, it's a who's on first, like Abbott and Costello type routine.
We're gonna have many merry games, you and I.
A game has rules. Your stunts are just random idiocy.
Okay, I'll give you a rule. You make me say, spell, or otherwise reveal my name backwards, and I'll split until our dimensions come into alignment again in about, 3 months, give or take.
I can't even say your name forward. How am I supposed to say it backward?
No, dope! You don't have to say it backward. You have to get me to say it.
Say what?
Kill Tipsy-Zim! Gosh, you're thick! Now, for the last time...
or maybe Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd, like that type of routine that has been done 100 times in comedy and certainly even in animation. But it's like, these specific roles here, the specific performances turned in by Tim Daly and Gilbert Godfrey in this episode of this wacky, goofy, raving lunatic and this just, like, slightly put out, normal, kind man having to deal with it all. It's so good. And for their two performances, I had to give this another 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I am right there with you. I also gave this a perfect 10 out of 10. Obviously, Gilbert Gottfried, the person, is pretty controversial, or has been. He pretty famously lost his gig as the Aflac Duck for making some super insensitive jokes back in 2011, I believe. And so, saying nothing of the man himself, this is another one of those performances that it just ends up being iconic in the DCAU lore. Like, he is this voice, and it, like, I can't think of a better casting choice for this annoying imp from a fifth dimension. Like, it just, I don't know what it is. It just absolutely works and fits with this character.
Yeah, it's perfect. And of course, Gilbert Gottfried, who, if you don't know the name, you know the voice. Parrot from Aladdin, a lot of other voice roles, as we've talked about. It's one of those things, and again, it's one of those things where in his other appearances in animation previously in Super Friends, he had this very, like, high-pitched, impish, weird voice.
It was the worst.
It's like a great Gazoo type character in that show. But this one, because they went with this very specific reason, this very specific version, and he had this very specific motivation, and he's being constantly outsmarted by this very sort of understated, serious, normal person. Like, it's a perfect voice for that location. Personal.
Yes.
The person notwithstanding, the performance is great, and it was pretty genius casting on Andrea Romano's part for getting him in.
Absolutely. That definitely reflects in our ideas and scores there. All right, Liam, let us tally our final scores up this week. Tallying everything up, I end up with a final score of 35 out of 40.
And I have also come to the exact same score, that being a 35 out of 40.
There you go. Well, imagine that. We agree. First show of the new year, and things are exactly the same as they always are.
There you go. Although I feel like it's been a little bit since we've had the exact same score.
That's fair. So. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about rewatchability, Liam, as we always do. Is this an episode that you're putting on again in the future?
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Right?
1,000%. No, it's not. Right. If you only want to do the big, serious, epic, important episodes, no, this doesn't qualify. But if you're talking about an episode that will hold up, that will reward you for rewatching, as we mentioned, because there's so many jokes and sight gags and background stuff, like, absolutely I would watch this 100 times out of 100 again. Like, this is a great episode. It's so much fun.
I 100%. I agree with you. It's a load of fun. Obviously, the character does return. Spoiler alert. He comes back later on to interact in another memorable episode. So he does return again. So obviously, if you're going to watch that episode, which is another fun one from my recollection, then you're going to want to watch this episode. The performances alone, like we said, it's a fun one. I was thinking, like, this is one, if you want to introduce and watch an episode with your kids, like,
yes.
I don't have kids, neither of us have kids, but, like, this is essentially watching a Superman Looney Tunes episode, so just put this one on, and your kids are going to love it just from the different sight gags and the goofy voices and all of that, and you'll enjoy like a goofy Superman episode. It's a fun one.
Absolutely.
It's one that you can show to people of all ages that'll enjoy it for just the zaniness of it. It's a good showcase of Paul Dini's just absolute range, like we said, from Heart of Ice to this episode, and just the goofiness of his unique style of humor, all of that. I think for all of that, that's why we recommend this episode for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, Liam. Well, that will wrap us up for this week's episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Don't forget, you can follow us on social media at DCAU Review, both on Twitter and Instagram. Don't forget, you can also subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, iHeartRadio, a bunch of those other ones out there. We would love it for you if you could leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast app, if they allow you to do that. Don't forget, our entire archives of the DCAU Review are available at DCAUreview.com. You can go in there. You can actually find the last time that we reviewed Superman episodes. You can break it down by series. You can find all of the episodes in one place there at DCAUreview.com. You can also find our store. If you're looking to support the podcast, pick yourself up a shirt or a hat, maybe a sweatshirt, something like that. Support us. Let us know that you like what we're doing here. Liam, we are, as we said, here in the new year, we are going to continue with some more Superman next week. Which means it's time to reveal what episode that's going to be.
It will be the episode Target, which, of course, introduces the character of Lightner/Luminous, although he sort of starts out, before he becomes full-on weird laser hologram supervillain man, I think he's just kind of a weird creep that's trying to kill Lois Lane. So we'll be interested to see how that character evolves, over the course of his few appearances in this series. But we will be looking at his first episode next week.
And of course, as we've mentioned several times, I think, as we've reviewed Superman episodes, those are episodes that for some reason were in heavy rotation on the Kids WB, and I think I feel like we saw them at least 3 dozen times.
Yeah, like every Saturday morning, seemingly. It would be it would be one of the Lightner episodes, and it would be Mad Love, like every week.
They had those in heavy rotation for some reason
sure.
on Kids WB. All right, well, we are excited to kick that off and cover that next week. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Adios.